Low-level I/O is pretty simple, basically. We're just putting characters out to a particular file descriptor or reading in from a file descriptor. Pretty easy. The read and write calls look almost identical, and they're what, as we talked about, the C programming language standard library use to perform things like printf and scanf. Each of the calls read and write actually return the number of bytes that they really transferred. Now, it is possible to get a number back from a read that is different than you asked for. If 0 bytes come back, you're at the end of the file. If a smaller number comes back, then that's all that was left in the file. And then if -1 comes back on a read, then you had an error. Same thing on a write. You had an error on the write attempt if you get a -1 back. Otherwise, if everything was successful, you'll get back in a return the number of characters actually written out. If you take a look here, read starts out with a file descriptor, which is an integer, and as we know, 0, 1, and 2 are standard in, out, and error. We also have a character buffer here, *buff, and that will be a character pointer, *buff, remember. This is the address of an array that is going to be holding our data after the read. This is the address of the buffer, where we're going to put things that we do the read. The number is how many to read, how many bytes to read from this file descriptor. If you put a 1 here, that's unbuffered input, and you'll read 1 byte at a time. Now, that's a lot of calls you're going to be making to read 1 byte at a time, but sometimes maybe you would. Like if you're writing an interactive game or something, you want to read every character from the keyboard without waiting for it to buffer up and do a carriage return, like you would get with a getS or something like that. So you need to just set this to 1 and read boom, 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 1 character at a time off of the keyboard, and if there are arrows or whatever, you make your decisions. Okay? Write is the same setup. You have the file descriptor that you're going to write to, the character buffer, the address of the 0th element of the array that you're going to be reading data from, and then how many bytes you need to write. If you're going to write 1 character at a time, that's fine. Again, that's still going to slow things down. If you're doing writing, you most likely will set it to the block size of the device, if you have any idea. If it's a 4096 block or it's a 1K block or whatever it happens to be on wherever you're printing to, or writing to. I wanted to say if it was a printer, maybe you could set that to 80 or 81 bytes if you're writing 80 character lines for this number of output. So that's read and write. That's the calls that we're going to use to transfer data back and forth. We're going to now take a look at a few more low-level calls, because if we're not in standard in, out, or error, we need to open some files, and we'll do that next.